This is mostly a parody, poking fun at the sensationalistic doom and gloom, specifically the thumbnail for this video. But we will get serious as we move forward, and I'll let you know up front, this is going to be a bit of a long video, so grab yourself a drink. GameMasters here, and we're about to travel all over the map, through the clouds and ultimately hit the ground running before pieces of the sky hit us. While I cannot argue that Hasbro firing 1,100 employees 2 weeks before Christmas is a low thing to do, even worse than giving your employees a Jelly of the Month club. Here's the thing. When news of this mass firing broke back on December 11th, their stock was at $48.50 a share. As of me recording this video, it's about a week later, and their stock is at $52.15 a share. It opened at $50.25 a share. Why the $2 bump? Well, they announced that their board of directors declared a quarterly cash dividend payment of 70 cents per common share, which is a share that anyone can buy. When you hear talks of keeping the shareholders happy, it's common shares that is being referred to. More on those shareholders in a moment, though. What does that all mean? Well, it means that if you buy 500 shares and are on record as owning them by the record date, February 15th, you will get a dividend check of 70 cents per share or $350. And that is why we saw that $2 plus bump. Now, that all means nothing, however, if Hasbro is not able to maintain their announced dividend amount and schedule. Most companies aim to adhere to their announcements, and that Hasbro made this announcement after their mass firings could speak to their confidence that their financials are solid. But the thing is that there is a major trust issue at play. We know that Wizards of the Coast saw its fair share of firings, from entry-level employees all the way up to Vice President of Global Publishing Michael Kelly was cut. We even saw Larian Studios make a tweet expressing sadness that many of the people they worked with in that original meeting between Wizards and Larian Studios were let go. That there's almost nobody left. And listen, if you have an IP, the value of Dungeons & Dragons, and are speaking with a game studio about making a Baldur's Gate 3 game, it's going to be some heavy hitters in that room on the Wizards of the Coast side. Some folks that are decision makers. In other words, people that are high up on the food chain. And some of them were let go. That brings us back to trust. And here's where I want to make a slight wonderment. Remember back when the OGL issue first broke? One of the things that we saw, and this was detailed in the Open Gaming License 1.1, was that Wizards of the Coast wanted third-party content creators to sign deals that were perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide, sub-licensable, and royalty-free, and that Wizards could use that content for any purpose. Obviously, that OGL version 1.1 never went into effect. Or is it about to? By Hasbro getting rid of many key people in their Wizards umbrella, or in the WotC umbrella, and looking at the fact that we are about to see a new, well, I can't call it new edition of Dungeons & Dragons, but a new version of Dungeons & Dragons. Will we also see a new OGL and system reference document to that new version that would lock creators into that perpetual, irrevocable, royalty-free license that Hasbro could use for any purpose? Now you're starting to see the chips falling into a much bigger picture. And it all boils down to money. People want to be rich. Most people want to be rich. And evidently this move in firing employees across the board and then giving an announcement a week later of a significant dividend payment, you got to ask, how orchestrated was this? Combine that with the attempted OGL change and a new version due out in 2024, and that in last year's shareholder meeting, we were told that Dungeons & Dragons was under-monetized. I don't know. I can't help but see some connection here all around. I don't think that it should come as any surprise at this point that Hasbro is all about money. As we've pointed out in past videos, they are in the business of doing business. They're here to make money. They're not here to peddle plastic toys or colorful cardboard or books. Yes, those are the mechanisms with which they are attempting to scoop up that money. I mean, you have to have something that the masses deem as a want or as a need. It just could it just as easily could be milk or bread or gasoline. But in Hasbro's case, it's Nerf toys, Transformers, My Little Pony, G.I. Joe, Monopoly, and the like. And under the Wizards umbrella, it's Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons. Now, as much as some people want this news from Hasbro, the firing of about 2,000 employees this year, because remember they did 800 earlier in the year too, doesn't mean that Hasbro's business is over. It doesn't make it a fiasco, a disaster, or even a scandal. Nothing has been killed and the sky is not falling. What it is, however, is Hasbro looking to increase its profits and please its shareholders. That evidence is clear. Otherwise, we would not have seen their stock prices go up. What I will admit is that, and I mentioned this, that we'd get to this earlier, trust has suddenly become a major issue. And that, in turn, isn't exactly going to be a good thing for Hasbro. I'll explain. Chris Cox recently stated that their third quarter earners for Wizards of the Coast and digital gaming grew by a whopping 40%, while other areas of Hasbro dropped as much as 42%. Why then would Hasbro choose to cut jobs from a division, WotC, that saw such stellar growth? Why fire Megan Donahue, the director of Magic the Gathering's Universe Beyond, one of the most profitable segments within Magic? Why get rid of the bulk of the team that worked with Larian Studios, the team that saw such a huge success in crossing over D&D into the world of video games? Well, the answer is probably far simpler than we can imagine. Someone higher up the food chain likely pulled that lever to get rid of the heads of those departments just to hire someone in at a lower wage, while at the same time lining their own pocket with a holiday bonus and putting a financial short-term positive onto Hasbro's overall bottom line. So, what does that do in regards to trust? Well, simply put, it shatters the trust of any employee left behind. It shatters the trust of the general population, you and myself, and even worse, what kind of trust will that instill in anyone that does take those positions in the future? They can work their ass off to increase profits and still ultimately find their head on the chopping block, all just to please that almighty dollar. Speaking of almighty, I need to thank these almighty supporters. Their support to this channel makes it so that I don't have to take on sponsored ads, and I cannot thank them enough. If you'd like to contribute by becoming a Patreon or YouTube member, I'll leave a link down in the description, and I'll add your name to this ever-growing list. Of course, feel free to throw in a super thanks. That goes a long way too. And I'll give you a special shout out in the next video as a thank you right back. Trust is a commodity that sadly seems to be missing from corporate businesses these days. And really, make no mistake, this is a standard business practice. Hasbro wasn't the only one to give the bah humbug to their employees during the holiday season. State Street, a company that specializes in, get this, investment management, research, and servicing, let go of 1,500 employees. Spotify gave its employees roughly a 2-hour notice that it was going to eliminate roughly 17% of its workforce to the tune of about just a little more than 1,500 jobs. And according to CNBC, Amazon cut several hundred employees in its Alexa, music, podcast, and gaming divisions. And there are more companies doing this, all right at the start of the holiday season, of this 2023 holiday season. Yeah, it sucks. It's a rotten Grinch-like thing to do, but I'll also cite an example of Zulily. There was a major online retailer that was once valued at around $7 billion. That's with a B, billion. On December 7th, they announced that they were letting go of 292 employees. Then, 24 hours later, that number grew to 500. And if you currently go to Zulily's website, you just see a message that says we're down for maintenance. And that is what can happen in this corporate business world in a flash. One moment you're valued at over $7 billion, the next you're laying people off, and the next you've gone belly up and have had to close up shop. Is Hasbro at risk of this? As we mentioned earlier, probably not. Even though some out there, folks who used to be fans of Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering, would certainly want to see Hasbro fail. On the other hand, even a corporate billion-dollar entity like Zulily wasn't immune to customers spending their dollars elsewhere. In all of that, I can say this. There are plenty of other game systems out there. Monty Cook Games has a great system for role-playing, as does Free League Publishing. Games like 10 Candles is awesome. Wander Home, Blades in the Dark. I mean, the list goes on and on. You don't have to be tethered to Hasbro's IP of Dungeons and Dragons. And if card flopping is your vice, then there are lots of other collectible card games out there other than Magic the Gathering. And that is what could potentially spell doom for Hasbro, because right now their cash cow is Wizards of the Coast. Should enough players simply cease buying their product, either due to bad business practice or flooding the market with too much product or creating a subpar product, all of that could drive players away, and Hasbro's attempt to cut their way to solvency, well, you simply put, you can't achieve financial stability by reducing expenses or cutting costs, especially not cutting your workforce. That is only ultimately going to do more harm than good. There is no one size. Yeah, what I'm trying to say is there's no one-size-fits-all approach, nor is there one singular answer to turn a ship around that is facing financial hard times. I do know that there must have been a realistic budget in place, and that's something that they need to adhere to. And along with that comes some long-term planning, but also, too, having the right people in place to run the ship. I cannot help but believe that in Hasbro's case, they simply don't have that at this point. Or maybe they do. I mean, according to their stock price, at least, and a healthy 70 cent dividend payout is certainly going to go a long way with the shareholders. But then again, some shareholders want things to drastically change. Over a year ago, back in 2020, I think 21, Altifox Capital Management, for example, which owns about 2.5% of Hasbro stock, wanted Hasbro to spin off Wizards of the Coast into its own entity. Altifox estimated that doing that alone could potentially double Hasbro's share value by $100. And that is what we should keep an eye on. At the time, Altifox suggested that Hasbro stock was hovering at around $97 a share. Today, it's just over $50 a share. What a difference a year can make. Viewers, we've said it all. We've covered in depth more of what's going on with Hasbro, but I want to hear from you now. Talk to me in the comments. Let's play a game in which you are tasked with making Hasbro profitable. What would your strategy be for developing its brands to increase its growth? I think mine would be to examine former CEO's Brian Goldner's plan, who sadly passed away in 2021, because under his direction, Hasbro stock was among the highest it had ever been. Second to that, I would have kept the moneymakers at Wizards of the Coast employed because, to be frank, they made up for the toy division's losses. Now, talk to me again down in the comments, and until next our paths cross, may you see a high yield on your investments. And there's a fly flying around me. High yield on your investments.